Hi. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you braved the big snowstorm of our first snowstorm of the year. But thanks for coming out this morning. And we are talking about our to-do list, and we all have them. And January just seems to be a time when we add to them. We don't go, hey, we just start adding things that we're going to do during the year. But the problem with to-do lists, and I don't really have to tell you this because you know this, is that putting things on your to-do list doesn't necessarily equal marking them off. And just because we make resolutions, or just because we decide we're going to make changes, or just because we set goals, doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to actually accomplish them. And so what I want to talk to you about this morning, and what we're kind of trying to do all month, is not add to your to-do list. I don't want to add things that you feel like, oh, I have to do this. And I don't even really want to set goals for you because I don't know your life and I don't know you well enough individually to give you a goal that would be helpful. But I'm hoping this month that we can kind of just sort of lay out some wisdom from Scripture and from life. That these little sort of tweaks that you could do to your life that would make all of your to-do lists go better, that would make all of your resolutions go better, that would actually hopefully make your career and your family and your just your life in general. And so today I want to talk to you about, and I think I stole this from Home Depot. I didn't actually steal anything from Home Depot. I stole this from a Home Depot commercial. But I really want to talk about how to go from to-do to done. And that's a nice way of saying this other thing that we really don't like to talk about because it's sort of icky to talk about integrity and keeping commitments and following through. It's never comfortable to talk about that. It's never comfortable to go, hey, am I a person of integrity? Do I always follow through? Can people count on me? Do people depend on me and know that I'll never? Now here's the thing about this, and I just want to say this because it's true for all of us. And this is not going to be something this morning that any of you are going to go, oh, well, I'm good. Because none of us are. But here's something that I will say. I think that we all sort of think we are. Because it's so easy to see this lack of integrity in others. But it's so difficult to see in ourselves. This is something you can't see in the mirror. I just find it's so easy. In fact, I'll tell you how I know that it's easy to spot this in others. I mean, we have... Besides rants on Facebook, we have all sorts of methods, don't we, of doing this for others. And nothing is sort of more unsettling and will make you mad at it than someone makes a commitment to you. And that's why Yelp exists and Angie's List and Merchant Circle. Someone makes a commitment to you and then they don't follow through. You know, someone says, hey, I'll be there, and they're not. Or, hey, you send the money and I'll send the product on eBay, and then it doesn't come through or it's damaged. I bought a sink, really expensive kitchen sink on eBay one time, a couple of years ago, and it said new in box, and I got it, and it was like, not only it looked like it had been folded in half, it was in a box, but it was in a box that said Staples, that's not what I mean by new in box, and it was just destroyed, and I remember I'm going to write the worst, recommendation ever, but I was like, I got so bent out of shape about that, I can't believe they would say it was new in box, it was clearly used and damaged. But we notice this, don't we? In other people, and I'm a contractor, so I don't hate me, I'm a contractor, but we notice this in contractors, we notice this in service companies, we notice this in restaurants, we notice this in businesses, sort of like any situation where we pay money or we expect a service or we're promised something, man, it's not like it goes unnoticed when people fall short. When people don't come through and when people don't do what they say. And so I don't know if we have any, really sharp pins out there on Yelp or Angie's List, and some people just love, and I'll tell you something about me, I was so mad about that sink. I did nothing about it. I did send it back. I did get my money back, but I didn't write anything. I'm that guy who's like, boy, I'm going to tell the world how much they suck. I never did. But some of you probably do. Some of you Yelp review everything. I did not. I'm just lazy and just want my money back and we'll go on with life. But here's the thing I know about us, though. When I read Yelp reviews or you sort of look at Angie's List and hear what people are saying about certain contractors if you're looking for a contractor, I'm betting that people that complain when the cable guy that's 30 minutes late, they're probably late to stuff, right? And people who complain that they didn't get what they paid for or the payment came late, they probably pay things late because we do, right? And the people who are complaining like they didn't do what they said, probably if you ask their children or you ask their boss, they would say, they don't always do what they say. Because here's the thing, friends, it's like the problem is that when things don't go the way we said they would go, like, we've got reasons, don't we? Everybody else has excuses, but we've got reasons why we weren't able to be there, or we weren't able to complete it, or we weren't able to actually pay that on time, or hey, I just couldn't. It was a snowstorm. You saw the big snowstorm Saturday night? That's happened, and so I wasn't able to do that. And so I just want to talk to you today, and hopefully this helps all of us, because I know I struggle with this. It's so hard to sort of keep every commitment. And we're all spread so thin, aren't we? And it's like so tempting just to like say yes to so many things that it just becomes very, very difficult, and then we have reasons we don't accomplish it. But I want to talk to you about how to really be a commitment-keeping, follow-through ninja, the person who does what they say every time. And I want to read you something from Jesus. And it's always good to hear from Jesus, because Jesus was the master at this. Jesus was God in a bod. Jesus is sinless human being that sort of proved what is possible. And so here's what Jesus wrote. Now, Jesus was in this sort of rant that we call the Sermon on the Mount. He was sort of going through all of these different things, and he gets to this area, and he was actually talking about making oaths, like, I swear to you, I double dog dare, I swear on my mother's grave, all these things that we say to kind of say, I promise you I'll be there. Jesus goes through this list and he says, hey, don't swear by heaven, because that's where God lives and you don't control it. And then he said something really nice about the earth. He said, don't swear by the earth, because that's God's footstool. And no, science geeks, I don't think he was actually saying God leans back and uses the earth like an ottoman. But he was saying, like, it's important to God, but not the most important thing on his list. He's like, don't swear by your head, because you can't, change the color of a single hair. And he didn't know about dye jobs, but anyway, he was like, don't swear by anything. And then he says these simple words. He says, but let your yes be yes, and let your no be no, for whatever is more than these is from the evil one. To which all of us go, yeah, that makes sense, right? Like, that would be good. That would be very helpful if everybody did that. Like, if the contractor told you when he was going to show up, told you how much it was going to cost, and when he would be done, and it happened exactly like that, right? And let me give you a tip. I've got a couple tips about contractors, because I are one. Don't feed contractors. They're like animals. They're like what my wife always feeds contractors. And I came home 3 months into a 1-month project, stretching it a little bit, but not by much, and they were having pizza and cookie day, and I was like, these guys are never going to leave, honey. And for some reason, our jobs always run long when we get something done, because my wife feeds them, but they are like wild cats. So do that at your own risk. But imagine a world where every advertisement was absolutely true, and every friend that said, yeah, I'll help you move, actually showed up. And every time your kid said, yeah, I'll be home at 9, that actually happened. So you kind of look at this and go, yeah, that would be cool. Just 100% of the time, keep your word. 100% of the time, do exactly what you said. We don't need to go, hey, I swear on my grandmother's wooden leg, I'm going to be there, because we would just do whatever we said. And when we said yes, it would mean yes. And we said no, it would mean no. And you go, Jesus, excuse me, that would be a good world to live in. And the funny thing is, most of us, because it's so hard to see in the mirror, we go, yeah, it's pretty much what we do, right? A few exceptions now and then. We have our reasons. But here's the problem, and I told you I'm excited to sort of learn something from Jesus this morning. But the problem with Jesus, as you read this. And on one hand, it seems so simple. You're like, yeah. And on the other hand, it seems a little bit impossible. Like what, every time you're never going to, oh, Jesus was never late to an appointment? Well, actually not. There's one story about Jesus that kind of it's sad, but it kind of cracks me up. They told him, like, your friend is dying. And he said, kind of busy right now. And he didn't go to see his friend Lazarus. And then his friend died. He showed up 3 days late, but he told him. But he did raise them from the dead. So I feel like you always get a pass if you don't show up when people want you to show up and you raise them from the dead. But imagine, like, never breaking a commitment, no matter how small, never saying you will when you won't, never having an excuse, never having to go, hey, I'm sorry, but. Now, the problem with Jesus is exactly what I said is good about Jesus, is Jesus is a master. I don't know if you've ever had the great opportunity of learning from a master. I have several in my life over the years. And I'm not talking about someone with a master's degree. I'm talking about someone who's actually done something for the 10,000 or 20,000 or 100,000 hours it takes to be a master. I remember I worked for a carpenter named Irv when I first started in construction. And I only went in construction because I had long hair and I couldn't work anywhere else. I really didn't desire to be in construction. But I was a laborer, and it was very clear I was a laborer because that's what Irv called me. He never called anyone by their names. He would go, laborer, clean this up, or laborer, bring the, Not a nice guy, I will say that, and just a master at complaining, but also a master carpenter in the truest sense of the word. And it's funny because I look back now and I go, man, he seems so old. He was probably like my age now. He might have been 55. He wasn't really that old, but the thing about Irv was that his standards were so ridiculously high. And over the years, like, I didn't work with him that long, but over time, he started allowing me to help him a little bit. And I don't mean like, hey, can you build this cabinet for me? He was like Phoebe teaching Joey to play guitar. He didn't let you touch his tools unless you were carrying them to his truck. He's like, get your own tools. You're not touching mine, you wood butcher. That's what he called everybody that came close to a saw. But it was interesting because he would say, hold this laborer, go get this labor. And just sort of hanging out with him and helping him, which was a lot better than digging or picking up trash, I learned so much. And in fact, I learned so much from Irv. I don't recommend doing this. It's horrible. The next job I took, I didn't say I want to be a laborer. I said, I'm a carpenter. And they didn't know the difference. So it was great because I learned that much from Irv. But Irv would say these crazy things. He just had these just such high standards. And he would say, like, always, underpromise, overdeliver. And he had all these Irv sayings. But the thing about it is like, when you work with someone who's actually mastered it, you can't say, well, that's not possible. Like Irv would say things like, well, if you cut it for me, get it within a 64th and I'll fix it with a belt sander. And it's like, if I could get it within a 64th, that would be amazing. Like you can't even tell the difference of that. But that was the type of standards. And that's the thing with Jesus. Like when Jesus said, well, just say yes when you mean yes and just say no when you mean no. Never, ever back out, never, ever, don't keep a commitment. It's you can't say it doesn't happen because Jesus was sinless, but just like Irv, it sounds a little crazy because their standards are so high. Have an opportunity to train Taekwondo with a master. We get to call him Grandmaster Kirby. And that's fun. We have Taekwondo here Wednesday night, and I also do Monday night, and now I'm doing Saturday. It's becoming as you can imagine, like a 50-year-old with arthritis. Got to be excellent at fighting, right? But I do enjoy it, and I'm learning things, and I get to do it with my daughter. But one thing about working with Grandmaster Kirby, he started. He didn't start Taekwondo in the 80s. He's 58 years old. He had his own school in the 80s, so he's been doing that over 30 years. And so he basically just walks around with his arms crossed, with like sweatpants and a starter jacket on. But occasionally, and especially when there's new students in the class, like last week, there's new students in the class because it's the new semester starting. You got all these white belts there. Occasionally, you see him like dress out and he puts on his uniform and you go, oh, he's got his dobok on. He's got to do something mastery today. That's going to be fun. And he puts on his black belt, and this is a great move if you could do it. Not many can, but like he doesn't put on his 7th degree black belt. That's probably in a case in his office somewhere. He puts on this black belt that's actually shredded. It's like, oh, it's so cool looking because it's like shredded with strings hanging off of it, and it's not even black anymore, it's like gray. And you're like, I could wear my black belt like Dwight for the rest of my life, and it's never gonna look like that. I don't know if he ran over it with his car, but it looks amazing. But actually, sometimes he'll do these mastery things, and you're like, and it happened Monday night. We were standing there, he was showing the new students, he's like, do a side kick, which is one of the basic kicks where pretty much exactly as it sounds. You turn your foot sideways and you kick at the side. And most of us humans sort of turn our body and kick pretty low because we're old. But he brought a 16-year-old, third degree, I don't know if he's ever won state, but he's competed at state level. Probably the best Taekwondo player you're going to meet and I'm going to meet. And he brought him up and he should demonstrate a side kick. And this 16-year-old, boom, he shoots his foot up there. I'm using my arm. I can barely get my arm up there. Like his foot goes up in the air sideways at his head. And he's like, that's pretty good. He goes, but, you know, you're opening yourself up to get kicked in the side like that. He goes, what if you just did it standing straight? Now, to you and me and everybody sitting out there, you know, if I hadn't been in his class for a long time, you go, well, no big deal. What he meant by that, and you can try this at home, but don't do it like in front of people because you look either like you're handicapped or you're making fun of the handicap, which neither one is a good look. But basically what he said is, what if you turned your foot sideways like this? And I can't even like lift it off the ground and see what I mean about it. It's not a good look. But what if you turned your foot and you just lifted it up and kicked like that while your face, I can't even do it. I can't even stand like that. But as he's standing there, he goes, come over here. And we have one of the, I think he's a football strength and conditioning coach at one of the high schools. He told me, but I wasn't paying attention. But anyway, he's 6'4", this big guy, and he's pretty new. And he just took his foot, and he stands toward him, and he turns it sideways, and he puts it in his neck. And you just go, oh, I don't think that's possible, but I just saw it. And see, that's what masters do, and that's what's frustrating about masters. Like, it doesn't seem physically possible. Like, I can't even get my leg turned around that, and I certainly can't lift it up and kick someone in the neck with it. It's like impossible. But I saw it happen Monday night, and there was a bunch of parents texting out there, like watching YouTube videos that never even noticed because it didn't seem like that big a deal to them. But to those of us who've been in it for a while, we're just like, that is not human. But he's been doing it a long time. He's a master. He's done hundreds of thousands. And so that's the thing about, and so that's what I want you to understand about Jesus. Like on one hand, it seems like no big deal. Just like there were people in the crowd Monday night, just like, oh, no big deal. He can turn his foot sideways and kick a guy, 6'4". He's 58 years old, no big deal. And on the other hand, some of us are like, that's not possible. My body doesn't work. That's Jesus. Jesus is saying you could live a life, imagine a world where everybody just, no, hey, there's no contracts in this world. Can you imagine lawyers would be out of business? It'd be great. But can you imagine like just if you say you'll do like, yeah, I'll build you a house. It'll be, $294,000, not a penny more, not a penny less. I mean, imagine like no contracts, no like, hey, we're going, there's a contingency clause if I don't do this, or hey, there's a penalty if you don't, or hey, there's an incentive if you do. Jesus is laying out this world because he's a master of integrity. Where if you say yes, it means yes. And if you say no, it means no. Now, even though it seems impossible, there is one good thing that he gave us in this story, or in this tiny little snippet, sort of Jesus tweets wisdom. Notice there is a no in there. And that's good, right? Because he didn't say yes, always say yes, and then follow through. Because that's what it feels like, right? It feels like, oh, I'm a bad person if I don't say yes to everything, or I'm a bad person if I don't take on every commitment, or I'm a bad person if I don't do whatever my kids want, and I'm a bad person if I don't do whatever my boss wants. And so I say yes to all this crap, and then some of it I do, and then some of it there's really good reasons why I don't. But Jesus said, just say no. Him and Nancy Reagan. But it's sort of helpful, I think. He might have stole it from Def Leppard. I don't know. Like he was just saying, like, don't make promises that you can't keep. They have all their arms there. That's an old picture. But it's amazing. Like Jesus is saying, I'm just saying. I saw them last year. They're amazing. But here's the thing. Like Jesus is saying, you can say no to stuff. Like seriously, you can say no. You don't have to say yes to everything. And in fact, if we're going to live this life, I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, probably, if I'm going to master this integrity thing, I'm going to have to say no to quite a few things. We're going to have to be willing to go, I know you expect this. And this is so tough because we have so many people sometimes in our life, like, and our kids and our family and mom and dad and our friends. And it's like all these things coming at us. But what if we could live a life of integrity where our yes meant yes and our no, even though people don't want to hear it, maybe they'd rather hear that than, yeah, absolutely, and then we can't follow through, right? Because let's go back to the reason why we hate why we hate this situation when it comes at us, when a contractor or a restaurant or a doctor's office, what's up with them? Like they make this appointment, they don't keep it, or they say, hey, the check's in the mail, and the check is not in the mail, or they have 1,000 excuses why they didn't perform what they said, or that window guy that he was supposed to be there and you took off work and he never showed up, and all of these people that just drive us crazy, and we spend so much time going, I can't believe that they didn't follow through. Because here's what we know when it's not us. That really, this concept of integrity, of following through, of keeping commitments, is really just about getting what you paid for. Like, we really wouldn't be, let's just think outside of ourselves, because when it's us, it's like, we have reasons and everybody else has excuses, and it's kind of easy to just go, oh, well, they don't know what happened. They don't know, like, my daughter was sick and they didn't know. But here's the thing. Just think about others, the people that have disappointed you in the past. Like, wouldn't you rather just get what you paid for? Like, and maybe they said, oh, sorry, man, I can't get your car in on Friday. It's not going to happen. But what is worse is saying yes, and then you wait all afternoon, and it doesn't happen, and they go, hey, we're going to have to keep it over the weekend. What you really want in life, and what would really be satisfying customer service, it'd be great to get a deal. It'd be great, to feel like, oh, I got something special. But we'd be happy, I feel like, if we just got what we paid for, right? Like, if we just got what we paid for, that would be good. Because here's the thing about breaking commitments in the biggest sense. Like, it's sort of theft, isn't it? When I put my trust in this person and then they don't come through. Or I give this person money and then I don't get the item that I bought. Or I pay for something and it turns out it's not nearly as advertised. Or I depend on someone. I put my trust and I base my day, or I base my trust on someone, and then they don't show up. Like, all of these things in little ways, they're sort of a form of theft. And in fact, when it comes to the consumer side of this, like, it actually becomes theft, right? Like, you can be a bad contractor. I'm picking on contractors because I am one. You can be a bad contractor, and for a while, people just go, oh, that guy's a bad contractor. But after a while, there'll be a lawsuit, right? And you could actually be arrested for taking people's money and not doing what you say because it's theft. But we don't think about, as employees and fathers and mothers and, children and all of these people who are sort of not giving people what they paid for. Now, you might say, and I understand this, like you may say, but it's different because I'm not in the public service. I'm not paid to do this. This is just a commitment I made. I said I'd move them, but it's not like they're paying me. Trust me, they probably were talking about crappy pizza and maybe half a beer. Like, nothing was, it's different, Don, and I understand that. But let me tell you this. And so if you get nothing else today, at least let me give you a surefire tip. Like, you can take this. Here's 100% guaranteed way to get a terrible job from a contractor, if you want. Just saying, like, you might not learn anything else, but if you go like, I want to get a house built, or I want to have an addition put on, or I want someone to remodel my bathroom, and I want to have a horrible experience, and then I want to go on Yelp or Angie's List and just cry because it's going to be so terrible, here's a way you could do it. Like, really talk them down on price. They like that, trust me. And then, but here's the way to have the horrible experience. Pay them in advance, 100%. And I'm not saying that because contractors are bad people. I'm saying that because they're people, right? Like, you wouldn't do that, would you? You wouldn't go, hey, I'm getting a house built and I've already paid for it and I'm sure they'll be done on time. You're not that dumb. I hope not. You haven't done that, right? Because you're never getting that house built. It'll be 6 years before it's done. But here's the thing. I'm not saying, they're bad people. They're just people. Like, when we're paid in advance, no one has ever done this. Like, so I really can't, I'm imagining, I get paid 90 days later, but imagine like paid in advance, like how easy it would be like, well, I'm going to go do this job and I'll get back to that, but I already cashed that check's gone. But here's the thing. I was thinking about this, like, I think the reason why we struggle with keeping commitments sometimes is that we're sort of paid in advance for a lot of things. Now, I know it doesn't seem like that. I know it doesn't seem like when your friend says, hey, can you help me move? They didn't pay you anything. They're too cheap to hire movers. I'm sorry, but like, they didn't pay you anything. But think about this. Like, if you say, yes, I'll be there, what do they say? Like, hey, thanks, man, that's great. Man, I really appreciate that. That's great. So you get all of the you get all the perks up front, like, I'm a good person, I'm helping to move, and then you don't show up. So no big deal, right? Because something came up, man, I've got a reason. But I was thinking, like, why is it that it's so easy? And I realized, like, the easiest commitments to break are actually the one where you get the love or the hug or whatever. Like, your kids are never going to say to you, like, Dad, if you'll come to the game, I'll give you a hug later. There's no transaction like that, but you go, yeah, I'm going to be there and see you. And they go, oh, that's great. And they give you a hug, and you feel fantastic. And then you don't show up and you think, no big deal. But actually, the problem is so many times, whether we're paid in advance or not in advance, when we make a commitment, and what Jesus knew, and why it's so difficult to deal with this, is that we get credit for things. Like, we get credit for saying yes. There's a reason you say yes, right? Like Jesus said, just say yes or no, and whichever it is, stick with it. So why do we say yes when truthfully it's no or a maybe? Is because we sort of get payment in advance. We get, great, you're a good friend, you're a good dad, you're a good employee, and then we don't follow through and we wonder, like, why it's a big deal to others and it doesn't seem like a big deal to us. It's because they put their trust in us. They gave us a thank you, and we sort of get all of the benefits, and then we kind of back out on the back end of actually bringing. And so that's why Jesus said this. And that's why it's so stinking powerful, even though it seems so simple. It's like one of those master things that you go, that could never work. If I didn't see it, I wouldn't believe it, but yeah. And then others of us go, that's so simple, that's nothing. But it's so important to go, what if we lived in this world? What if we were people that when we said yes, no one questioned it because they knew it would be true? And we were people that actually, if we couldn't do something and we couldn't keep a commitment and we weren't even sure, we'd just say no. And notice he says, for whatever is more than these is from the evil one. Now that seems pretty strong, like, if you break a commitment, it's from Satan. It seems a little strong, like I didn't show up on time to my dentist appointment. Satan is pleased with me. That's not exactly what he's going for. But what he is saying, he says, it whatever is more than these gives room for the evil one. And I think there's some truth in there. Like, bad fathers don't keep commitments. And it's little things like, and bad mothers and bad employees and all the things that we go, well, that's nothing. But over time, what he's saying is, like, your reputation, your personal integrity, what people think of you can be ruined because of these simple little things that we say yes to. Now, here's good news for you if you're like me and sometimes you say yes and you mean no. Like, it's just weird how you confuse those two words, or maybe you just sort of like, here's another bad old saying, like, your eyes are bigger than your stomach. Like, you put too much on your plate and then you're not able to finish all those things. Here's sort of good news to you, because if we just had that, that's amazing, that's mastery, but this idea of like, I always say yes and I mean it, or I say no and I'm perfect integrity 100% of the time, never miss a commitment, never miss an appointment. I just want to read you this one simple little story of Jesus this morning. And he was talking about something else. Jesus was great at like telling stories and then using them to make another point. And Jesus was actually making a point about something pretty big, like the religious people didn't believe what God said, and he had actually a whole following of like the worst people they thought in society, the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the drunkards, and all those people were going, okay, and they were repenting, and religious people weren't. So he's making a point. But in this is a story that I think helps us in our deal with commitment, because it's about two brothers who struggled with the same thing. He said, but what do you think about this? A man with two sons told the older boy, son, go out and work in the vineyard today. And the son answered, no, I won't go. But later, he changed his mind and he went anyway. And then the father told the other son, you go. And he said, yes, sir, I will. But he didn't go. And then Jesus asked this question. Which of the two do you think actually obeyed the father? And they replied, the first. So one guy, the older son, he just said no. And so he was sort of disrespectful and disobedient. But actually, in the end, I don't know why he changed his mind, but thought better of it and thought, you know what, I'm going to actually do what I said, what my father asked me to do. I'm going to follow through. And the second one actually said yes. He did what we do when we say, yes, absolutely, I'm with you 100%. And he got the good boy, you're a great son. So he was paid in advance. And guess what? He, like so many of us struggle with, like he just didn't show up. And it's interesting because if you just sort of value being obedient or disobedient, what the point Jesus was making is it's much better to actually do the right thing than to say the right thing. And I was thinking about this story and I was like, oh my goodness, maybe my crazy old, master carpenter that I worked back with, in 1992 was actually right. Like what Jesus was saying is like, it's better to underpromise and overdeliver. Like it's better for people to be surprised that you said you couldn't help them, but you actually found time and felt like you should and you showed up. And it's better for your kids to be surprised when you're at their game, even though you had to work, and you said, I'm sorry, honey, I don't think I can do it this time. And it's actually better if, that thing your wife's been asking you to do, you actually show up on that weekend and you're bringing the tools out and you're actually doing it and she's shocked. I mean, it would be better than you saying you're going to and months later it's still not done and the tools are setting in the floor. I've done that. Don't do that. But it's a story, and I was thinking, like, maybe this. Because I've never been able to forget those words that Irv told me those years ago. Like, I forgot most of the stuff he said. Did learn a lot about carpentry, and I'm no means a master carpenter, but everything I know probably from the beginning was just watching that guy work. He was incredible. But this idea that people said for generations, just underpromise, overdeliver. And now, I want to tie this in with last week. Last week, we talked about something else, about not expecting what you don't inspect. Now, it was funny because I apologize if I talked to you this week because it seemed to come up in every conversation. There's pre-preaching and post-preaching, and they're super annoying, so I apologize if I spoke to you. But this is a big concept too, and I hope you're doing this. I hope you're going, I'm not just going to expect things magically to happen that I'm not willing to look into, that I'm not willing to take stock of. So that's what I would urge you this morning, is how do you know if you're actually a person who keeps commitments? How do you know if you're a person of integrity? How do you know if people can count on you and that you're going to have to, and this is going to be awkward because they'll tell you, ask them. Ask them like, do you feel like I follow through when I tell you something? Do you feel like I'm a guy you can count on? It might not be a good conversation, this might help you. But it's funny because everybody around us knows. I was in a situation, a while back, and I was in a meeting, and somebody was missing, and I go, this person's not here yet. And they go, I know, we don't wait for them. And you go, ooh, wow, I guess they don't show up very often. And so people know, and I want the band to come back up here and play for us again. But I just want to add this, not to your to-do list so much. As I said, this is not something that you just put on there and we can check off. But I love, love, love for you to think about this. And think about this idea, because kind of think about sometimes, what could I pass to you that I think would actually be super practical and help. And I never try to just go to Scripture and go, hey, I want to learn something and some fact and tell people facts. That's never my idea when I come up here. I would not waste my time, and I wouldn't waste your time. But man, this stuff here, in my experience at least, can absolutely change your life. It can make you a better parent. It could definitely make you a better employee. It can make you more successful, I believe, in your career, in your schoolwork. Anything that we do, man, this is so powerful. So I want to pray with you. And I want you to hopefully take the time to sort of inspect where you're at on that level. And with me, man, if you're struggling in this area, this is not something, if you walk out of here and go, not me, I'm perfect in this area, you are fooling yourself, because none of us are. We all struggle with this. So let's pray together. Dear Lord, God, help us to be just masters of integrity. God, it's so, so difficult. God, I fail at this. God, it's so easy to say yes and sort of get the credit and get the praise and get the pat on the back and then just have a reason not to actually follow through. But God, help us to be a church full of people who, when we say yes, it means yes, and also that we have the sort of confidence and courage to say no when we actually can't do something. God, I pray for everyone here. God, I know that life is very difficult. And on any given day, we're all struggling with things, and I pray that this would not be a burden, but be a great help to all of us this week. In your name we pray. Amen.